Spirits of the Sky. The birth of the legend. The moment of fate. The Pacific frontier. 1944. Altitude, 20,000 feet. The air is thin and freezing, but inside the cockpit of a Grumman Hellcat, the heat is stifling. The pilot hears only the rhythmic rasp of his own breathing and the intermittent crackle of the radio. Suddenly, the sky ahead blooms with the black smudges of anti-aircraft fire. Dozens of Japanese Zeros dive from the clouds like vengeful ghosts. In this heartbeat, an ordinary boy from Nebraska or New Jersey ceases to be just a pilot. He becomes an ace. But what truly lies behind that title? Is it a gift from above, the result of relentless drilling, or a stroke of impossible luck in a world where death arrives faster than you can squeeze the trigger? Today, we pull back the curtain on the myths of America's Knights of the Air. We will travel through the smoke of Midway and the fiery tracers over Berlin to discover the true price of the gold wings pinned to a hero's chest. Pause. The storm clouds. A challenge to freedom. By the dawn of the 1940s, the world was suffocating. The shadow of tyranny had stretched across Europe and Asia. While America clung to its neutrality, her future adversaries were already forging the perfect killing machines in the sky. Japanese pilots boasted thousands of combat hours over China. German Experten of the Luftwaffe had sharpened their claws in the Spanish Civil War. When the echoes of the Pearl Harbor explosions rolled across the nation on December 7, 1941, the United States faced a bitter reality. We had the courage, but our planes were outclassed, and our tactics were archaic. The myth of enemy invincibility grew with every American airframe lost. To survive, the nation didn't just need to catch up. It had to reinvent the very soul of aerial combat. Pause. Yet within this darkness, a new strategy was gestating. While the enemy relied on the individual brilliance of lone wolves, America began to build a system where every pilot was a vital organ in a single massive steel organism. This was the first step in transforming American aviation into the most effective force in human history. American might, the industrial sledgehammer. It is often said that pilots win wars. This is true, but only half the story. This war was won by the factories of Detroit, the shipyards of California, and the drafting boards of visionary engineers. While Japan painstakingly hand-finished every engine, American industry shifted to the mass production of raw power: the P-51 Mustang, the P-47 Thunderbolt, the F6F Hellcat. These names would soon become synonymous with death for the Axis powers. But the secret of the American aces wasn't just in firepower, it was in survivability. Self-sealing fuel tanks, armored seatbacks, and powerful radios gave our pilots something the enemy lacked: a second chance. Pause. Story loop, Rudder 1, first among equals. Consider Richard Dick Bong, a farm boy from Wisconsin who simply loved to fly. He didn't look like a Hollywood star, but he felt his P-38 Lightning as an extension of his own body. Bong didn't hunt for glory. He hunted for ways to protect his wingmen. This trait, the devotion to the wingman, would become the bedrock of the American School of Aces, shattering the myth that an ace is an ego-driven duelist. The Tactical Revolution and the Ace of Aces. Tactical Deep Dive. The Thinking Man's War. In the early days of the Pacific War, the Japanese A6M-0 was a ghost that could not be caught. It was lighter, more maneuverable, and flown by men who viewed combat as a martial art. For an American pilot, trying to outturn a Zero was a death sentence. The myth of the invincible Japanese aviator began to demoralize the fleet. But America's greatest weapon wasn't just horsepower. It was the ability to adapt. Enter John Jimmy Thach. He didn't just fly, he analyzed. On a kitchen table with matchsticks, he developed the Thach Weave, a defensive maneuver that turned a pilot's vulnerability into a deadly trap. By working in pairs, American pilots stopped flying as individuals and started flying as a lethal net. They realized they didn't need to outmaneuver the enemy if they could outthink them. Pause. This shift changed everything. The Wildcat might have been slower, but with the Weave, it became a predator. It was the birth of a doctrine, mutual support. It meant that no American pilot ever truly flew alone. This wasn't just a tactic. It was the American philosophy of brotherhood, translated into .50 caliber fire. Personal stories, the Medal of Honor, skies. Story loop number 2, the one-day legend. October 24, 1944. The Leyte Gulf, Commander David McCampbell, the Navy's ace of aces, finds himself facing an impossible sky. While most aces accumulated their scores over months, McCampbell was about to do the unthinkable. Along with only one wingman, he intercepted a formation of 60 enemy aircraft. In the span of 90 minutes, McCampbell systematically dismantled the enemy formation. He didn't just shoot, he practiced aerial snipership. When his Hellcat finally touched down on the deck of the USS Essex, his guns were empty and his fuel was gone. He had shot down 9 planes in a single mission, a record that stands as a testament to American grit. Pause. But ask McCampbell, and he wouldn't talk about his 9 kills. He would talk about his wingman, Roy Rushing. He would talk about the ordnance crews who stayed up all night to ensure his guns never jammed. The myth of the lone ace died in the Pacific, replaced by the reality of a team that refused to fail. The turning point, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, June 1944, the Philippine Sea. The Japanese Navy launched its last great carrier-based airstrike, hoping to crush the American advance. They called it the Decisive Battle. We called it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The myth of Japanese air superiority vanished in a single afternoon. American radar, a technology the enemy vastly underestimated, allowed our controllers to direct Hellcats to the exact coordinates of the incoming strikes before they even saw our ships. The sky was filled with the trails of 400 plummeting suns. Pause. It wasn't just about better planes. It was about the production of men. While Japan's elite pilots were dying and being replaced by terrified teenagers with 10 hours of flight time, every American pilot arriving at the front was a highly trained professional. The United States had turned the sky into an industrial process, and the result was total air supremacy, the final push, the price of valor, and the eternal legacy. The final push. Dominance over the Reich and the rising sun. By 1945, the sky was no longer a battlefield. It was an American highway. In Europe, the P-51 Mustangs, equipped with drop tanks, were doing what was once thought impossible, escorting B-17 flying fortresses all the way to Berlin and back. The myth of the impenetrable fortress Europe crumbled under the roar of the Packard-built Merlin engines. But this dominance was not a product of luck. It was the result of a brutal war of attrition. American pilots were now flying fighter sweeps, intentionally seeking out the remnants of the Luftwaffe to destroy them on the ground or in the air. The American ace had evolved from a defender into the ultimate instrument of strategic victory. Pause story. Loop number 3. The courage of Robin Olds. Among these giants was Robin Olds, a man who epitomized the American warrior spirit. A former football star who brought the aggression of the gridiron to the cockpit. Over Europe, he became a double ace, but his story didn't end there. His leadership underscored a vital American truth. The machine is only as good as the heart of the man commanding it. Olds and his contemporaries proved that American air power was not just about numbers. It was about an unbreakable spirit of defiance. The heavy price, the sacrifice behind the stars. We celebrate the victories, the medals, and the painted kill marks on the fuselages. No, we must never forget the cost. To become an ace was to dance with death every single day. For every hero who returned to a parade on Main Street, dozens more vanished into the deep blue of the Pacific or the charred soil of France. The empty chairs in the ready rooms, the letters home that would never be finished. This was the heavy price of freedom. Being an American ace wasn't about the glamour of the flight suit. It was about the burden of leadership and the trauma of losing brothers in arms. They were young men, often barely 20 years old, carrying the weight of a world's fate on their shoulders. Pause. These men didn't fight because they hated what was in front of them. They fought because they loved what they left behind. Their valor was not measured in the planes they shot down, but in the liberty they secured for generations they would never meet. Legacy, the guardians of the Republic. Today, the engines of the Mustangs and Hellcats have mostly fallen silent, replaced by the thunder of jet turbines. But the DNA of the World War II ace lives on in every branch of our military. They defined the American way of war: superior technology, unmatched training, and an indomitable bond between wingmen. The monuments in Washington and the quiet graves in Arlington stand as silent sentinels to their greatness. But their true monument is the world we live in today. A world where the American flag remains a symbol of hope and a warning to those who would threaten the skies of freedom. Pause. As we look to the horizon, we remember the farm boys and the city kids who took to the clouds and became legends. They were the ones who turned the myth of the ace into the reality of American exceptionalism. They are our fathers, our grandfathers, and our eternal heroes. Let their stories be told as long as there is a breeze to carry them and a flag to fly in their honor. For in the cockpit of every American fighter today, the ghost of a 1944 ace still sits, whispering the same timeless command: check your six, stay on target, and bring them home.